Thank you, Ray, and thank you, Julie. Wow, I could almost just say amen and say we've been well fed today. That Torah portion was wonderful. Okay, now in Hebrew, the way they do the scriptures, a lot of times the way they name the scriptures, like Bereshit, it's like the first major word in that book of scripture and such, and they do that a lot. They do that with some of the parashat and things like that. And the title of my sermon's kind of like that today, because the title of my sermon is "Did God Really Say?" But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the subject of my sermon. Because before I even talk about my sermon today, I have to tell a story of how we got here today. Because, I was assigned this sermon a couple of weeks ago. And I've been working on it on and off, putting things together. I got 19 pages of notes here.
But the kids are really hoping you'll say.
Oh, I've been told already. I've been told already that I have to keep this short. And if I go too long, you'll get a comment on the computer back there from my wife that'll say, "It's time." So, my wife. I love my wife. Okay, and Caitlin will appreciate this story a little bit more, perhaps, because this is fairly recent in her family. About 2 years ago, we lost our last poodle. Okay, but that was, we were getting ready to move and everything, and so I told my wife, no more dogs. Okay, we got too many things going on. Well, we get moved and everything, and about 6 or 8 months ago, my wife starts, I want a poodle. And she's really intent on this. So she's looking at all these scam sites on Facebook and everything, getting into all sorts of trouble. So finally, I go out to one of the poodle rescues and I fill out an application and I say, okay, we've applied to a poodle rescue. But we hadn't even got our fence up or anything yet. Well, a few weeks ago, Bonnie's son got our fence up. So, of course, my wife's ratcheting up her stuff here. So I applied to 2 more poodle rescues. Maybe 3 more. I don't know how many. A bunch of them. Well, there's a couple of them that you have to kind of watch their site when a dog comes along. And about a week ago, there was this one dog that came up. And I told my wife about it. And she looked at it and she's like, nah, not interested in that. I'm like, okay, good. But on Thursday morning, because I check in the morning when I get ready for, I'm getting set up for work, and I look on the computer, and there's this, well, it's not a poodle, it's a Havanese, but if you know anything, it's got poodle roots. Beautiful little dog. So I wake my wife up, and I'm like, you might want to get up, and you might want to look at this dog, because it ain't going to be there long. So she gets up a little bit later and she looks at it. She's like, yep, want it. So we send off the email to the people and everything, and they call her later in the day, and she talks to the, I guess, foster person, and she decides she wants this dog. So then it's like, well, this dog's in Orlando. And so it's like, when are we going to go get this dog? So we were like, well, we can't go Saturday because that's Shabbat. And like, she was looking at Sunday, and I'm like, okay, but then I looked at my schedule and I had an appointment that I couldn't break. And so the lady's like, well, can you come tomorrow, which would be Friday? So So I looked at my calendar and I'm like, well, I'm off work tomorrow. I've already finished my hours for the week. Yeah, we can do that. So that's why my wife's not here, because we had an up and back trip to Orlando yesterday, and she's kind of convalescing from that trip, but also bonding with her new fur baby. But that's not the real story. The real story is, was this really what we were supposed to do? Because, I mean, we actually came back, and we came back after Shabbat, because we didn't get home till like 10, 11 o'clock last night. Well, here's where it gets even better. Because we go and we meet them about 3:30, and we meet the foster parents, and, you know, we meet the dog and everything's going good, and we do all the paperwork and everything that we need to do. And the lady had said that she was going to give us some treats for the dog and this and that and everything. And we get going down the road, and my wife's like, well, I didn't see any treats in there. And I'm like, well, we'll have to stop somewhere and get some treats and some dog food and, you know, so on and so forth. So we're heading out of Orlando, and I'm following my GPS, you know, wonderfully, you know, and it says you got to turn on this exit 1 whatever. And I'm following the GPS. I even look at the map and, you know, see that, you know, okay, yeah, looks like the road's going, I'm going right. Well, I made a wrong turn. And so I start to get a little upset, you know, as us guys do. But lo and behold, a block or two down the road, there's a Walmart. It's like, somebody's telling me something here. So we pull into the Walmart, and we're like, okay, I'll go and get some foodies for the doggy and whatever we need to do. And so one of the things, just prior to us going down there, we had got a couple things at the Walmart here, and I was going to see, oh, maybe I'll pick up a little bit of food. And we like this, we like to feed our dogs biologically appropriate raw food and stuff like that. But they had the fresh food thing at the Callaway Walmart, but it was empty. They had just put it in, I guess, or something. I don't know. They've done their remodeling. So we go into this Walmart, my son and I, and there's one of these things, got the fresh food, and we got everything we needed and everything, and we skedaddle out of that Walmart, and I'm like, wrong turn. Walmart so we could get the stuff for the dog. Things are starting to add up here. Of course, it's starting to get to Shabbat, because Shabbat comes early nowadays, so it's like, you know, I start going down the road, and it's like, yeah, I'm starting to get hungry, and we probably should eat before Shabbat. And lo and behold, a Popeyes pops up right there where I could turn right in there and get in there, and we get everything done. So, so you see, I was supposed to be working on this sermon yesterday to finish it up and put the final touches on it for today. So we get in late last night, and I go to bed. I'm dog tired from driving. And Joe's going to appreciate this. Drill sergeant in the morning, it's like, Airman Gutknecht, get your butt out of bed. Finish this sermon. Okay, so I roll out of the sack. I get on the computer. I bring up my notes and everything. And I wrote about 2 lines. And it was like, stop. I'm like, okay. Something's going on here. So, I'm going to go through my notes, but I don't know what I'm going to talk about. In fact, one of the girls was asking me, who's teaching the lesson today? And I raised my hand. She goes, what are you going to teach about? And I said, I don't know. And she's like, you don't know? I'm like, no, I don't know. So we're going to go through this, and who knows where we're going to end up today, because I'm going by the Spirit here, so pray for me. But if you've been coming to the congregation for a while, you've probably heard me talk about this particular exchange here in Genesis, because it's one of mine that helps keep me grounded and helps me to understand something. And we'll talk about that as we go along. We're going to Genesis chapter 2. We're going to be reading verses 15 through 17. And Yahweh God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. And Yahweh God commanded the man, saying, You may freely eat of every tree in the garden, but you shall not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. That's important. Pay attention to what was just said. Because we're going to go fast forward to Genesis chapter 3. We're going to be reading, starting in verse 1, and we'll see how far we go here. Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which Yahweh God had made. And he said to the woman, Is it so that God has said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, pay attention, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, God has said, You shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said to the woman, You shall not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as God, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasing to the eyes, and the tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave it to her husband with her, and he ate. Now what's particularly interesting in this is that, was that really what God said? Let's compare these real quick. We have the exact quote here from Yahweh God. It says, You may eat of every tree of the garden, but you shall not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for in the day you eat of it, you shall surely die. That's the quote from Yahweh. But when the serpent asked the woman, Hey, can you eat of any of these trees in the garden, right? The woman said to the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, God has said, You shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. That's different. Now, how did Eve find out what God said? Well, we don't have any scripture saying that God communicated these commandments to Eve, so the only assumption we have is that Adam taught Eve what the commandments were that Yahweh had given. So one could assume here that Adam thinking, I don't want Eve to get in trouble here, so I'm going to tell her not only shall she not eat it, but don't even touch it. So you don't even get close to violating what Yahweh said. Now, is that a good thing? Good intentions, perhaps. But is that something we should do? Well, we're going to continue on and learn a little bit more here as we go along. And I got to keep watching the clock here. Because we're going to fast forward to Moshe in the Hebrew. And just to give you a little historical context so we don't have to read all the scriptures through here. Moses was first commanded to strike the rock at Horeb to bring water out of the rock for the people in the wilderness. Then again in the desert of Zin, they found themselves without water, and the people again complained to Moses, and Moses called upon Yahweh. And this is in Numbers chapter 20, verses 7 through 12. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, again, quote from Yahweh, "Take the rod and gather the assembly, you and Aharon, your brother, and speak to the rock before their eyes." That's right. That's important. See? We got an emphasis here. The Spirit's with me here. "And it shall give forth its water, and you shall bring forth to them water out of the rock, so you shall give the congregation and to their animals to drink." And Moses took the rod from before Yahweh as he commanded him. And Moses and Aharon gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said to them, "Hear now, rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock?" And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he struck the rock twice. And the water came out plentifully for the congregation and their animals to drink. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aharon, "Because you did not believe me to sanctify me in the eyes of the sons of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them." Whoa, what happened here? Uh-oh. Yahweh said what? He told Moses to speak to the rock. But Moses struck the rock. We see a repeating pattern here, don't we? All right, now this next one. This story. This is a story that will go down in infamy. Now, I'm not going to read the entire story out of the Bible again because this one is a long one. And for the sake of time, I'm going to tell you the story briefly, just paraphrase it. But it's in begins in Numbers chapter 22. For those of you that know that chapter, you already know where I'm going here. Balak, son of Zippor, he was a sovereign that was fearful of the Israelites because they were growing great in the land, and they had kind of whacked down some other kings in the area. And so he wanted to find a way to get over on these guys. So he sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor. And this was a prophet of Yahweh. Apparently, he must have been of some note for him to even know about him. And he sent to him, and he sent some of his people to him, and told him what he wanted. He wanted him to come and curse Israel so that he could overcome them in battle. And Balaam at first was pretty dutiful. He says, just go away. I'm not going to do that. He went and he talked to Yahweh. Yahweh said, send these people away. And so the guy sends some even more notable people from his kingdom and things of that nature, and so on and so forth. back and forth. He goes back to Yahweh, asks him again, and he says, okay, well, all right. Go ahead and go with them. Of course, on the way, the fun part of the Bible, he's riding on his little donkey, and the donkey starts, going out of the way, and he strikes his donkey and stuff, and, finally his donkey, pushes him against the side of a wall there, and he gets pretty upset with his donkey. And his donkey turns around and gives him a few choice words. And then it's revealed to him that there's an angel standing in the way with a sword drawn, about to cut him asunder. But then again, he's given pause to leave and go. And for a while, this guy does pretty good. He goes to Yahweh and says, hey, and then he goes back and he says, yeah, I still can't curse these people, and still can't curse them. And the story isn't real clear in the Bible as to exactly what happened in the book of Numbers. But it does say later in chapter 31, it gets a little bit more information. In chapter 31, verse 8, and then further in verse 16, it says, and they killed the kings of Midian, besides the rest of their slain, Evi, Rechem, and Zur, and Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. They also killed Balaam, the son of Beor, with the sword. So this guy ended up getting killed by the Israelites. So, that's interesting. And behold, these caused the sons of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to commit sin against Yahweh in the matter of Peor. And if you know a little bit about Peor, that's one of the pagan gods, and da-da-da-da-da. And the plague was on the congregation of Yahweh. So the story goes basically that Balaam basically taught Balak how to get the sons of Israel to sin so that the blessing of Yahweh was no longer with them. And that way he was able to overcome them. Now this story is very significant because it's not just this story in the Old Testament. Because Balaam, the son of Beor, is mentioned in Deuteronomy, again in Joshua, in Nehemiah, in Micah, and let's go to the New Testament, because he's there again. Let's see, do we have time? Let's see here. Let me see where we're doing. What's that?
I said no work.
Yeah. Yeah, I might be getting away with it. Let's see here. Let me see where we're at here. I'm going to see if I can... I guess we're going to have to read most of this just to put it in context. This is in 2 Peter chapter 2, 12 through 16. But these, as unreasoning, natural brute animals, having born for capture and corruption, speak evil of the things that they do not understand, and they will utterly perish in their own corruption, being put to receive the wages of unrighteousness, deeming indulgences as pleasure in the daytime, and reveling in sports and blemishes, and feasting along with you in their deceits, having eyes full of adultery, and never ceasing from sin, alluring unstable souls, having a heart exercised with covetousness. They are cursed children who have forsaken the right way and have gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, but had reproof of his lawbreaking. A dumb ass speaking in a man's voice held back the madness of the prophet. And then again in Jude, so man, this is what the fifth or sixth reference to this in the scriptures. When Yahweh repeats stuff in the scriptures, it's usually important. In Jude it says, "Woe to them, for they have went the way of Cain, and gave themselves up to the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah." So now we're tying the error of Balaam to Cain and gainsaying of Korah. That's interesting. But we're not done yet. Revelations 2:14 and 15. "But I have a few things against you, because you have there those who hold the teachings of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit fornication." So we're getting more information on what really happened there. "So you also have those who hold the teachings of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate." Now, the Nicolaitans, when I was researching this, I had to, what the heck is that? And basically, that's the same mindset of, just taking this kumbaya thing and, doing things your own way, and kind of adding to things that Yahweh may have told you. So let's continue in the times of the New Testament here. We're going to talk just briefly about the oral law of the Pharisees. There's a famous rabbinical maxim that says to build a fence around the law was originally published in a Talmudic tract. I can't even pronounce this thing, but it's in English, it's the Ethics of the Fathers. The basic thinking is as follows: we do not want to violate the Torah. So basically, their thought was, okay, we're going to build a fence around the Torah, and that way people can't even get close to violating its precepts. Let's see how well that worked out for you. Yes?
I'm trying to interrupt. Quick message from your wife. She says, "Ask Richard if he took care of the chicken and dumplings for potluck."
And she bought another puppy.
And this is
I
why
think that's a broadside across your bow.
this is why we have wives, and you can reply to her, yes, but Kim actually helped me do that. So thank you, Kim, for helping me out with that. But that is important, because you wouldn't enjoy the chicken and dumplings if I didn't make sure that was taken care of. So again, that goes to, this thing about taking responsibility and doing what we're supposed to do. We might get to that at some point today. Who knows? I don't know where we're going yet. Yeah, that's true. Now, let's see what Yeshua had to say to the Pharisees about this thing here. We're going to go to Mark, and we're going to start in chapter 7, verse 5. "Then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, 'Why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders?'" When you see that, think oral law. "But eat loaves with unwashed hands." But he answered and said to them, "Well has Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. However, they worship me in vain, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandments of God, you hold to the tradition of men, dipping of pots and cups, and many other such things you do." And he said to them, you do well to set aside the commandment of God, so that you may keep your own tradition? For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and whoever curses father and mother, let him die the death. But you say, if a man shall say to his father or mother, Corban, that is a gift of God, wherever it may profit me, and you no longer allow him to do anything toward his father or mother, making the word of God no effect through your tradition which you have delivered, and you do many such things. So what was Yeshua saying here? He was saying that these guides and fences around the Torah, they kind of cut the Torah off there and actually ended up violating the Torah. So we have to be real careful when we're doing this stuff, because Yeshua wasn't very kind to the scribes and the Pharisees about these kind of things. In fact, in Matthew 23, starting in verse 1, Jesus spoke to the crowd and his disciples, saying, the scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, observe and do. Be careful on how this is translated. But do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. Now I'm going to stop here because many translations get this wrong. Joe, do you have something you wanted to?
Because it's one little yod from the Hebrew that got left off when they translated it in Greek. It says, do what Moses told you.
Right. That's the intent of this. Do what Moses, because they do like we do. They had the oral reading of the Torah, and then they would, have like a sermon like we have here. But that's what he was saying here, is do what Moses said to do, but don't do what they're doing. And this is why he says that. For they bind heavy and hard to carry burdens and lay them on men's shoulders. Oh, this speaks to me so powerfully. But they will not move them with one of their fingers. But they do all their works in order to be seen of men, and they make their phylacteries broad and enlarge the borders of their garments. And they love the chiefest of the couches, and it goes on to say, all these things that the Pharisees do to be recognized outwardly for their supposed righteousness. And so we have to be careful with this word here. He goes on later in this chapter, and he says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses and pray at length as a pretense. Therefore you shall receive greater condemnation. Because what is one of the big things that Yahweh tells you to take care of? The widows and the orphans, right? I like this part too. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you compass sea and dry land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, you make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. Now this is Yeshua talking to the religious and kind of political leaders of the area there, because even though they were under Rome's authority, they gave a lot of authority still to the scribes and Pharisees in taking care of their own affairs there. So he was pretty bold at this. Woe to you, blind guides, saying, whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing, but whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. And he says, fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? And whoever shall swear by the altar, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gift that is on it, he is a debtor. Fools and blind, which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore, whoever shall swear by the altar swears by it and by all the things on it. And whosoever shall swear by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells in it. And he who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. And then he says, Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithes of mint and dill and cumin, and you have left undone the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. Ooh, we're learning something here. You ought to have done these and not to leave the other undone. We're learning something here. And he says here, Woe to the scribes and the Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside they are full of extortion and excess. Blind Pharisee, first cleanse the inside of the cup and the dish, so that the outside may be cleansed too. All right, so, and he goes on. I mean, this whole chapter, he's just lambasting the scribes and the Pharisees for what they're doing wrong and such. I mean, quite frankly, these are the things that ended up getting Yeshua crucified. I mean, he was right in their face, you know, and that's the thing is, you know, in your typical mainline Christianity, you know, they have this image of this, you know, kind and loving Jesus that, you know, oh, he's this sweet baby Jesus, you know, he doesn't do, you know, he's sitting there all sweet and cuddly and never says anything wrong or says anything that, you know, would make anybody angry. And here he is. He's giving it to him straight and direct. And this is the concluding part of that chapter, and this is kind of powerful. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one killing the prophets and stoning those who are sent to her, how often would I have gathered your children together, even as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you would not. Behold, your house is left to you desolate. For I say unto you, you shall not see me from now on until you say, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahweh. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. Yes. So, there are some that accuse Yeshua of the same thing. They say that Yeshua added to Torah. Is that true? Well, let's read some of the stuff that they use as evidence that Yeshua added to Torah. And let's just see what we can think of this. We're going to go to chapter 5 in Matthew. We're going to start in verse 21, and we're just going to read a couple of these and give some examples here. He says here, You have heard that it is said of the ancients, You shall not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be liable to the judgment. But I say to you that Whoever is angry with his brother without cause shall be liable to judgment, and whoever shall say to his brother Rakah shall be liable to the Sanhedrin, but whoever shall say fool shall be liable to be thrown into the fire of hell. Therefore, if you offer your gift on the altar, and then remember that your brother has anything against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly while you are in the way with him, that the opponent not deliver you to the judge, and the judge deliver you to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Truly I say to you, you shall not by no means come out of there until you have paid the last quadrantes, or last bar, whatever, little penny. Did Yeshua add to the Torah? Well, what is the Torah? Yeah, we could go to John right now, couldn't we? Didn't we just read this? Oh, providence from Yahweh again. There it is. Things coming together. We just read this, didn't we? The Word was with God. The Word is good. And the Word is Torah. So, and there's other ones, he talks about lust here, about committing adultery, but yet it's, says, he who looks at a woman to lust after, and, making oaths. He kind of covered that in the last one we just talked about, making the oaths on the temple and things like that. And, all these things. We don't need to go over those, I don't think, today. But the point is, we need to guard the Torah. And in order to guard the Torah, I think we need to know what the Torah is and understand it. And it's interesting. Me as a military guy, this is very interesting to me. Because when we're talking about guarding the Torah, in a lot of English versions of the Bible, it will talk about keeping Torah or keeping the law. But in the actual Hebrew, it is guard. And it's not just, just a kind of casual guard. It's talking in militaristic terms. It's like guarding as a sentry would guard his post. And so if we look at it from that perspective, how are we going to guard the Torah in our own lives? Without adding to it, without putting a stumbling block before your brethren. Seems like someone, I think it was Paul was talking something about this. Something about, as far as, I think it was something about eating food given to idols or something, and saying, don't put a stumbling block before your brethren. So we need to be very careful as we study in the Word and understand it, because that's the other part of this where, like I said, Yeshua was accused and is accused by some of adding to Torah because of, Basically, it's a Sermon on the Mount, that chapter in Matthew. But what was he really teaching? He wasn't changing the Torah, because that wasn't his mission here. His mission was to complete, or to clarify, to bring the Torah and its teachings and elevate it to the level that it needs to be. He completed the Torah. How did he do that? What did he do? He put it in the hearts, exactly, because he took it from the written page here, and what did he put into it? Oh, thank you, Yahweh. Hallelujah. In the moment you need it, he put the Ruach HaKodesh into the Torah. He brought the Spirit into the Torah. And he brought it together so that it could come into our hearts, so that we can live out the Torah in spirit and truth. That's powerful. And I think that's the message today, that we need to do that same thing with the Torah in our lives. We need to draw upon the Ruach and apply our understanding. I mean, we have this wonderful book that's been written to us. Many call it the love letter from Yahweh. It is. But we need to take those pages and place them on the fleshy tablets of our heart. That's what Yahweh wants. That's what we're called to do. And I encourage you to do that as you study this word. You know, again, this is all coming together here. From Joe's class this morning, he taught you how to study this word in such a way that you can get down to what it really is talking about, what the Spirit is in the original language, culture, and there's another one. Language, culture, and context. Put it all together. And I think I'm done. Hallelujah. That was awesome. I mean, at least from Yahweh's perspective.